The year is 1985. This was played in the US of SR. We got Karpov with the white pieces, Kasparov with the black pieces. Who would you guys choose? Me personally, fan of Karpov, very positional. He helped me with my weaknesses. I know everybody thinks Kasparov is the GOAT. I'm just not the largest fan of him, though. I think that's an uncommon opinion, but it's my opinion. So we get d4, d5. This is the World Championship match. Karpov defending the title. He's the 12th world champion. Kasparov took the match, but he didn't take this game. We're looking at it. Queen's Gambit from Karpov. You know the Karpovian school of chess, very positional? Not this game. This game, he plays like an utter savage, and we love that. So we get a Queen's Gambit declined, and Kasparov plays bishop to e7. I've never seen this move played before, at least not that I could recollect. Have you guys seen this played before? Do you know what the purpose of it? To me, it's kind of a peculiar move because it's much easier to know that you want the knight on f6 than the bishop on e7. If we back it up just a tad, the main move is knight f6. There's bishop to b4, playing it in Nimzo style. I like the move c5 because I like tension in the center. You know, you get c5, it's like trade wars. Everything faces everything. 1,000,000,000%, 1,000,000%, doubled, tripled, percentages all over the place. Trade wars. But we get bishop e7. It's pretty peculiar. It's not bad. I love what Karpov did. He took, look at this. He took bishop f4. It is like a Jabba the Hutt, Jabba London with the knight on c3, the bishop on b4, but no c-pawn. So arguably it's like a better version of it. That's how my tiny brain processes this position. A good Jabba. We get knight to f6. By the way, this camera sucks. My camera's getting shipped back to me. It'll be back in a couple days. I didn't want to upload a video, but it was taking too much time. I'm like, you know what? Just don't look at me. Just don't look at the camera. Don't look at me. There's some AI bot that makes it go left and right, and I move around a lot, and the quality's just not there, but that's okay. We're here for chess. We're talking chess. Pawn e3. You get the dark squared bishop out of the pawn chain, then you close the pawn chain so it's not trapped on c1. And you open up the light squared bishop, right? Don't neglect these guys. We get castles, knight f3, bishop f5. What should you do in a London v London when your opponent moves this and you have no c-pawn? You should go queen to b3. Queen to b3 aims at the weakness on b7. Either it induces a light squared hold weakness if they go b6, because then they can't fianchetto the light squared bishop, and it's like, why is my pawn on b6? And you're like, great question, why is your pawn on b6? That was done in one breath. So after queen to b3, they're supposed to go queen to c8. By the way, I'm hyped. We're chilling from traveling. But we're going back to Serbia. That's all I could say. We are going back to Serbia in a few months. So we get pawn h3. Now, I love this move. You could go bishop to d3 if you're into trade wars, if you're that type of guy. Queen b3 is the main line. What is the point of h3? You might be like, oh, Karpov, why are you so sleepy? Such positional chess, you know, the Karpovian school of chess. But actually, you know why he went h3? To go g4. Get a load of this guy. g4 is an unbelievable move. We love this kingside expansion. Gains a tempo on the bishop. Knight e5. He's like, I'm not done here. He's like, you wanted to feel no pressure? You're going to feel all the pressure. Now, I'm assuming this wasn't such a popular line. Yeah, it definitely wasn't. Bishop e7. I mean, who's playing that in 1985? So in this position, nowadays, the main line is knight bd7. But we get knight fd7, okay? It's a move. It's quite an oddity, but it tells us that he wants his pieces over there if white fianchettos. And you take the knight or the bishop. Well, that bishop's kind of a tank. It's kind of a sniper, so you take the bishop, right? He's still cramped then. You don't want to uncramp him, make him gain tempi. We get f takes. F takes is the right pawn to take back with because black claims the open f file then, semi-open. And I was quite happy because I was like, I would go bishop d3 here. He went bishop g2. After I reviewed it myself, I saw bishop d3 was better. Gave myself a nice little pat on the back and then humbled myself and said that I'm no Karpov. Bishop to g2, knight to b6, all right, coming into the holes, rotating over on the queen side. We get castles, finally white castled, king to h8. Quite an oddity. It is prophylactics. By the way, you know what I was looking at during the game? In some far-fetched, crazy world where white is castled and you don't need to deal with queen a5, look at this. Boom, bam, boom, 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 boom. Imagine getting a rook and 3 pawns for a bishop and a knight. That's what I was calculating, but it was way too far-fetched because castles, Literally, they would need to be like super unlucky to play a move that doesn't defend against that tactic. But it was something cool to look at. So we get knight b6, castles, king h8, knight e2. He's routing over to the king side, not getting his bishop trapped on f4, that is, but he's routing over to the king side. There's many other moves you could have played. Knight e2 is one of them, right? This is a d4 opening. You can do just about anything, and it's relatively equal. Pawn to g5. Where would you go with the bishop? Would you go e5? Would you go g3? Both are fine. He goes g3. You know? He goes g3. We got bishop to d6. Boom! Trade wars. I'm going to keep saying that because I find it a little funny. I'm not going to lie. I haven't been keeping up with anything really, and all I hear is yada, 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 and I'm like, okay, well, my life seems fine, so it's probably fine. I know that's a very dumb way to think of it, but I've been dealing, you know, I have my own stuff, my own plans, my own goals, so I haven't been, you know, doing too much of that politicking. Queen to d3, all right, getting the queen out, connecting the rooks. The reason he didn't trade is because that helps black gain a tempo. Vice versa, if black takes, white gains a tempo. Good stuff. Now, okay, something my student asked. He was like, e4. And then, I got to think, why not e4? You know, everybody needs to think. Well, think about it. Think about it. Imagine take. You give yourself an isolated pawn, which is not horrible. The closer it gets to an endgame, the more horrible it becomes. But the reason it's so bad is because he blockades the isolated pawn. So if you have an isolated pawn and it's getting blockaded, don't do it. Because when you're playing against an isolated pawn, you want to blockade the isolated pawn. And if your opponent can do that right away, it's not the greatest time to get an isolated pawn. So that is why not pawn e4. Queen to d3, knight to a6, and then you might be thinking pawn to f4. Smart guy. But you don't really want to pin your bishop, even though it's not pinned. It's like pseudo-pinned. You don't want to pseudo-pin anything. So it would make more sense to have the bishop off the board before going f4. But then again, you don't want to get the bishops off the boards. Do it on your own terms. The time will come. A good chess player knows when to strike, knows when to trade, knows when not to do that, knows when to stop talking because he's talking too much. This guy. Pawn to b3. I'm glad to be back and talking. La la la. I love running my mouth. Pawn to b3, queen to e7. All right, just like in Queen's Gambit, accepteds or declines that turn into accepted because the d pawn always eventually takes the c pawn, particularly after the bishop comes to d3. And that's the same thing as the queen coming to e7. Let me explain. When the queen moves, then you could take, and it's like you didn't even lose a tempo because they have to take back. It's like when you go bishop to d3 in a declined Queen's Gambit, and then they take once you move the bishop, because you move the bishop 2 times. 2 minus 1 plus 1, you get a 0 in there somewhere, and no tempi were lost. So bishop takes, queen takes. Now we don't have a bishop on g3 anymore. So what do we play f4? That's what we do. That's what we wanted to do. So f4, pawn takes, pawn takes. All right. Why do you take back with the pawn? Why is that best? I think there's an argument for the knight. But then you get a backwards pawn, and the only way you don't have a backwards pawn is if you push it, and then you're left with an isolated pawn, and then they blockade. We kind of already went over that, right? So take with the pawn, because yes, you isolate your pawn, but it's statically blockaded, right? It's not dynamically blockaded, so they have less vision, less routes to build up on it. It's like an isolated pawn against a brick wall. You're chilling. You're chilling. Not to mention you have a 3-on-2 majority. You'll thank yourself later in the endgame. Trust me, he did. And so yeah, pawn takes, dynamic, static, isolated pawn, pawn majority. Look at all this vocabulary. Rook A to E8. All right, how do you play for a win? This is why I respected it. You know, you could be like, I'm going to go Rook A to E1. I'm going to trade rooks. I'm going to trade rooks again. I'm going to trade queens. Fall asleep. That's just a balanced endgame. Why would you do that? Push a pawn in his face, pawn to f5. What is this? It's kind of like a clearance. You kind of want to jump your knight into f4 to get it to e6, where it does good stuff. So much good stuff that black's like, I'm not going to allow any of that. You're not coming to f4 into e6. Karpov's like, you think I get tunnel vision? The Soviet school of chess, you think they teach tunnel vision? No. Rook f2, new idea, boom, bam. Guarding from the side, fair statement, but it's a rook lift. It unties his queen from his knight. We get knight to d7. How do you punish that? What is the point of knight to d7? Well, he wants to come to f6 to e4 and be a tank. You don't let him be a tank. You go g5, shutting him out. Good space advantage, good pawns. Can you believe? I mean, if someone showed you this position, you're like, who has the white pieces? Would you say Karpov? No, you wouldn't, unless you saw this game. But other than that, no, you wouldn't. Trust me. I think you wouldn't. Respect if you would, but there's no shot. Queen e7, all right, this aims in on g5. You can go queen g3 because you did untie yourself, but he could choose to go h4. Okay, we'll live with it. Queen e3. Now this elects a queen trade. He's like, I'm trading on my own terms. He's like, just kidding, I'm trading on your terms. So we get a queen trade. We get king h2. Love this move. Favorite move of the game. Top three. Top three. What is the point of king h2? It's to take control of the third rank. See, with the king on g1, you have 0 access to the third rank. With king h2, you own the third rank. Activate your king. I mean, look how much better this king is than that king. That king's just like, and it's only really one square up, but they can't even go, nor would they want to. So our king, tank, their king, not tank. Good. We get knight to b6, knight to g3. All right, jumping into the position, knight f1. He's like, rook, get out of here. He's like, okay, I'm going to go rook d3 so I can untie my knight and not get a perpetual because I want to win. We get knight d6, knight g3, and Kasparov jumps in prematurely. What do you take back with? What do you take back with? Did you pin him? He didn't. He took with the bishop. The point is our knight is a tank. It's coordinated. Kasparov's like, oh, I want a pawn. But it's not about material. What do you do here? I would argue a lot of people here would take, but that is not good. Because take, you know, they're going to take, and it's just not great. You're down a pawn. Yes, your king's more active. It's a draw, apparently, but knights are tricky. I love knight endgames. They are my favorite type of endgames. So instead, what do? You go king h3, right? Endgame's all about activity. Activity that is, activity dotto. Rook king to g4. He's guarding everything. He's activating his king. This king cannot get activated, so he has problems. Pawn h5. What are we doing? All right, it's not a fun position. It's not a fun position at all. Right, they're going to slow play it, rook fea here. Eventually, you're going to take. You're going to have a 3-on-2 with a tank of a king versus a not tank of a king. And you're probably going to win that. It's +1, but h5 is wild. Maybe it was deflection. Maybe he miscalculated. Maybe he thought en passant splitting the pawns, but you're not going to do that. You're going to take with the king. You're going to take with the best piece in an endgame. So it was a deflection. You get a bunch of trades that are forced. And why is white winning here? How do you win? There's really only one absolutely winning move. Think about it. Black wants to go like g6 and say, get out of here. Where do rooks belong? Have you ever heard the statement, rooks on the 7th? Yes, sir. Aiming at the queen side, pinning the pawn down to the king, very important. And you're just winning the whole house. So he takes on a7, Kasparov goes b4, and after king to g4, Kasparov just resigns. Why? Well, this gains a tempo. And it's not so easy. You're just going to go h5. If he's wasting moves, you're just going to go h6. He's pinned. And if he goes to the back rank, you're just going to go, I would say, g6. And he's just tied down to the back rank. You collect all your pawns. You promote all your pieces. You win the game. Easy rook endgame. Good job, Karpov. Thank you guys, as always, for watching. I'll see you very soon. We'll have our camera back in a couple days. Good tings. Thank you, guys. Peace.